Well, good evening. Welcome everyone to Radnor Memorial Library. Thank you all for coming. It is a beautiful evening, and I really thank you for joining us this evening, showing up for all these wonderful community organizations: Radnor Memorial Library, League of Women Voters of Radnor Township, and Radnor Conservancy. And the library, the League of Women Voters of Radnor Township, and the Conservancy, very proud this evening to present Keep Your Eyes on the Prize, Plan for Land Use. But before we get started, I would like to recognize the new incoming president of League of Women Voters of Radnor Township, and that is Jillian Norris Zanto. You can say hi to Jillian there. And Jillian will be taking over from Roberta Winters. And also, I would like to say hi, Gretchen Grobel, my buddy here, Executive Director of Radnor Conservancy. Thank you, Gretchen, is here tonight also. And we hope to keep our get together here just about an hour. And if you have any questions, you may enter it into the chat. But what we'll do is we'll save those questions until the end of the presentation, and we hope we'll have time to answer all your questions. But great thing is, these are community organizations. None of us, we're not going anywhere. So you could always run into one of us somewhere or check out our websites if you really do have questions that we don't have time to answer tonight. So please keep yourself muted. Again, I want to thank you all for coming. And now it is my pleasure to introduce our moderator this evening, Gayla McCluskey. Gayla is the current Voters Service Chair and former president of the League of Women Voters of Radnor Township. Hello, Gayla.
Hello.
And Gayla will be introducing our panel this evening. And thank you, Gayla. I really appreciate you being our moderator this evening. I'm going to mute myself just as everyone else is muted. We are recording and we should get this show on the road. So thank you. Thank you, Gayla.
Yes, and I would like to add my welcome to everybody. I think planning is something of interest to all of us, and I'm here really as a concerned citizen like everyone else. Tonight, this evening, we intend to introduce participants to an overview of land use, mobility, and quality of life planning efforts underway in our region. This is going to be a very high-level panel, and the intent of the League is to have additional panels to dig deeper in the details on these things. We're going to start with the big picture, have the regional picture of the efforts that are underway. We're going to follow with a panelist that will discuss the Delaware 2035 comp plan, and our final panelist will discuss the comp plan for Radnor Township. As Pam mentioned, we will be taking questions at the end. I will be asking the panelists these questions, and so give us some good ones. We'll start with our first speaker, who is Jacqueline Davis. She is Assistant Manager of Long Range Planning for the Delaware Valley Regional Planning Commission, which oversees the 9-county area in Pennsylvania and New Jersey. In addition to that role, she oversees transportation planning for several communities in New Jersey. Jackie received her bachelor's in political science from Penn State and a master's in urban and environmental planning from the University of Virginia. And so now I'll turn it over to Jackie.
Hi, thanks so much for having me, and great to see everybody virtually tonight. I work, as Gayla mentioned, with the Delaware Valley Regional Planning Commission. We are a metropolitan planning organization. So what's that mean? That's a bi-state, federally designated agency for the 9-county Philadelphia region or greater Philadelphia region in Pennsylvania and New Jersey. So we are mandated to plan for the orderly transportation infrastructure agency. So that's really broad and expansive because transportation is critical to getting us to everything we want or need to do. It's a circulation system of our communities, and as a result, we can't just consider the transportation network in isolation, but we must understand how it connects with our communities, our economy, the environment, and any other facet of our life. In addition to the long-range plan, DVRPC, just for context, conducts a wide range of transportation, economic, environmental, and community plans, all through an equity lens. We also house and analyze a lot of data. We manage funding programs. We conduct educational forums, and we serve as a regional convener to bring different levels of government, planning stakeholders, and interested people of the general public together to have dialogue and form decision making. This is just a snapshot of our most recent work program and funding. You can see that we get funding from the US Department of Transportation, funneled through both PennDOT and New Jersey DOT. We get funding from the FAA for some aviation programs. Some local dollars are funneled through the counties and then through the states to us. And there's also miscellaneous funding that we receive through grants. We have a nonprofit arm of our agency or through public-private partnerships that we conduct. So DVRPC is governed by a board. It's an 18-member body from counties and cities around our 9-county region, as well as other stakeholders from places like PennDOT and the governor's offices. And the board has the responsibility and authority to make decisions affecting the entire organization as well as the 9-county region. So in its capacity as a metropolitan planning organization for the region, the board establishes things like regional transportation policies, determines allocation of available transportation funds, and prioritizes specific projects for the region. And in addition to transportation planning for highways, transit, airports, and freight, DVRPC develops plans and policies for other regional physical planning elements such as land use, air quality, housing, water supply, and water quality. So our work program really runs the gamut of everything in comprehensive planning. So DVRPC as an MPO is required to update a long-range plan, which is primarily a transportation plan, but covers all of these different facets. And we're required to update it every 4 years and maintain at least a 20-year planning horizon. We usually maintain a larger planning horizon than that. Our most recent plan is a 29-year planning horizon. So the long-range plan basically outlines a vision for the region's growth and preservation, and it includes a fiscally constrained or funded plan of projects for transportation infrastructure, and then a visioning plan for those things that we want to do but can't afford. Currently, we're developing an update to our current board adopted plan, Connections 2045, that was last adopted in September of 2017, and we're working on our Connections 2050 update, and that'll be presented to the board for adoption this fall. So I'll walk you through the process of developing a long-range plan just a bit. Each plan updates an opportunity to evaluate and take stock of current conditions and identify trends and forces of change that may be barely perceptible at this time, but really affect how our future is going to unfold. And understanding these trends helps to guide the population and employment forecasts, which are really critical to land use and transportation planning, and helps to inform the next steps in our planning process. So we use regional indicators to help us better understand where the region is with respect to different goals in our existing long-range plan. Tracking progress is one of DVRPC's newest online tools. It has 23 indicators related to long-range plan goals. You can see some of them here. I know the type is a little bit small, but things like air quality, bridge conditions, commute by mode, congestion, and educational attainment. These are all things that we track to see how we're doing in relation to the goals in our plan. Tracking progress was the first product of our 2050 long range plan, but it's really kind of a transition between and a link between the 2045 plan and the 2050 plan that we're working on now. And it helps us to better identify where we are, as well as areas on which we need to put some additional focus. Related to trends and forces is a scenario planning process. So this is a type of planning where we think of different kinds of alternate future scenarios that could unfold to inform what kind of contingent actions we might need to take depending on what kind of hits us to kind of get to those blind spots. We conduct a scenario planning exercise with one of our standing committees called the Futures Group. They are a collaborative transdisciplinary group of subject matter experts and other interested stakeholders, and we meet on a quarterly basis to discuss emerging trends and forces in the region and how they're shaping Greater Philadelphia. The next step in our planning process is establishing a vision for the region. A vision is based on the analysis of those trends and forces as well as public feedback. And we conduct a lot of outreach to the general public and all of our planning partners and interested stakeholders to develop the vision. In the summer of last year, we shared 4 plausible future scenarios that we developed with our Futures Group, with stakeholders and the public. And we asked a couple of key questions. Those were, what do you value most in Greater Philadelphia today? What concerns you the most when thinking about Greater Philadelphia in the future? And what's your vision or goals for the region? And when we asked those questions over a couple dozen different workshops that we held virtually because of the COVID shutdowns, we heard from over 700 unique individuals about their values, concerns, and goals. And we used the most prominent themes from all of that feedback to develop a broadly shared vision for Greater Philadelphia. The next step in our process is to recommend strategies to achieve the vision. And those were developed with stakeholders and the general public in a separate set of workshops held this past spring. So we just actually wrapped that process up a couple months ago. And in addition to planning strategies, we need to make the choices that support the regional vision through actual infrastructure investments. So the dollars that come to us, we have to actually allocate that funding to specific projects. And the plan outlines a strategy for capital investments to help achieve the vision over the next at least 20 years, in this case, 29 years. Here's just a snapshot of our draft plan's allocation of available revenue. It might be a little difficult to see, but I'll try to walk you through it just briefly. Funding is basically allocated to various roadway and transit categories based on comparative need, as well as meeting regional goals. So these allocations inform the funded list of projects included in the plan, and where there's not available funding for the other projects that we're interested in, they go on a separate visioning list. It's important to note that even if all of the anticipated plan revenues were directed toward preserving and maintaining roadway and transit systems, as we have a really large aging system in this region, it still wouldn't be enough money to address the identified need there, and we wouldn't be able to pay for any of the new things like transportation operations or bike ped improvements. So we're not the only region at a disadvantage, but certainly that we're in a funding pickle. So the priorities of the plan are to preserve and maintain a state of good repair for our existing systems, but the next priorities are operational improvements where you get a bigger bang for your buck, and bike ped improvements, as well as transit. So we aim to tie the entire process for long-range planning together with stakeholder and public engagement. And the next steps are evaluation. So how are we doing in achieving our goals, which takes us back to that tracking progress tool, and implementation, where we focus on shared efforts, including individual actions. I was asked what the current plan looks like relative to Radnor and the surrounding areas. we have a draft plan that we're working on now, and we don't have a map set up yet for our public comment period. But our existing plan 2045 is live on the website, and you can actually access a map of different projects that are highlighted on the website. I'll just bring in that map and show you a couple of examples. It's dvrpc.org/webmaps. And I'll provide the website again at the end. But basically, this is our 9-county region, and you can zoom in to an area like Radnor and see what kind of projects are going on in and around the area. One example, the closest one to Radnor is the Norristown high-speed line, where there's funded tie replacement and continuous welded rail. So those are just kind of preservation activities. Also near Radnor is I-76 integrated corridor management. So this is going to be a long-term project. It started back in 2018 and is going to continue through 2028. It includes things like variable speed limits, queue detection, dynamic lane assignments, junction control improvements, all things IT, ITS and operations focused. So they're not expanding the roadway, but they're trying to make the roadway as efficient as possible. There are also some smaller projects in the area. Is West Conshohocken. There's interchange modification. And this map also includes unfunded projects. For example, reconstruction of pavement and bridges throughout Delaware County. There's some bridges near Conshohocken as well. So the plan is updated as an iterative process. We're required to update the long-range plan every 4 years and maintain at least a 20-year planning horizon, as I mentioned. The Connections 2040 plan was published in or board adopted in 2013. Connections 2045 was adopted in 2017. And now, as I mentioned, we're working on Connections 2050 plan, which takes us to the year 2050, and we'll be presenting it to the DVRPC board for adoption this September. Looking at the present state of development and our communities, I can make a couple of suggestions for how individuals or residents might get involved in implementing the long-range plan. Certainly, we can't implement all of the strategies at a regional level. It really takes county, municipal, and individuals to do that implementation. Some of the ideas that are included in our 2045 plan on the website: join a composting program, insulate and seal your home, avoid idling in your car, use LED or fluorescent lights, buy local produce. I won't read all of them here, but I provided a copy of this slide deck to the hosts, and certainly you can either take a look through all of these by asking for a copy of that, or this is also available on the website. Here's a look at the timeline for completion of our Connections 2050 plan. It started in early 2018 with the building of a couple of municipal implementation tools and toolbox for implementation of the 2045 plan. In spring and summer of 2019, we did our scenario planning exercise with our futures group. We moved on to current conditions and visioning and strategies in 2020. And we've been developing the financial planning portion this year and are moving to public comment at the end of July. So our public comment period will open for 30 days from July 28th to August 30th. So we'll be making announcements at the libraries in our region, on our website, through email, and other public notices. And we'll complete the plan with board adoption at the September 23rd board meeting. If you're interested in keeping up to date with this plan update or getting involved, you can sign up for emails online at dvrpc.org/2050. There you can also sign up for a newsletter, and DVRPC posts updates on its social media, so you can follow on any of the major social media platforms at DVRPC. And this is my name and contact information. You can feel free to follow up with any questions, but I know we'll be having a Q&A session at the end of this. So looking forward to hearing your questions and sharing any more information I can.
Thank you very much, Jackie, for sharing what's going on in our region. We're going to move a little bit smaller area into Delco County. Rebecca Ross, AICP, is Principal Planner for the Delaware County Regional Planning Department, where she has worked for 15 years. Rebecca has also received a master's in urban and environmental planning from the University of Virginia and holds a bachelor's in historic preservation from Mary Washington College. And I'll turn it over to Rebecca.
Thank you, Gayla. Let me share my screen. Okay, so I'm Rebecca Ross. I am a principal planner with Delaware County Planning Department, and I'm here to talk to you about comprehensive planning at the county level in Delaware County. So to start out with, who are we at the Planning Department? To refer to our mission statement, our mission is to promote the sound development and redevelopment of the county through the application of contemporary planning principles and smart growth concepts while maintaining and enhancing the cultural, economic, and environmental livability of the county. I'd like to point out that Delaware County Planning Department is a department of the county government, which means we are responsive to our elected officials, the 5-member county council, while also supporting the council-appointed Planning Commission board, whose role is to review subdivision and land development projects that come through the county. Now, this is a role of the Planning Commission required by the state, but it is still an advisory role. So the Planning Department does provide support, technical assistance, review, recommendations to the Planning Commission, but we are, as I mentioned, staff of the county government. This is slightly different than you might hear if you hear people talk about Chester County or Montgomery County. They're the planners who work for the county, work directly as staff of the Planning Commission. It's a subtle distinction, but it can make some differences in terms of how projects are devised, how the work program is implemented, and that kind of thing, and who our bosses are and who we're responsive to. So within the County Planning Department, we have 7 functional planning areas that are supported by administrative staff. In Delaware County, most planning staff are funded through county, but as part of the county's budget. Although some of our staff who are engaged in community development sorts of activities receive federal community development block grant funds as part of what the county has allocated to cover some salary. And a couple of our transportation planners receive funds, pass-through funds from DVRPC. Within this department, the community and regional planning section generally oversees the long-term policy and comprehensive planning processes. Although, as you'll hear a little bit later, in our comp plan structure, we also have involvement and input from all of the different functional areas, depending on the subject of the plan. So, what is a county comprehensive plan? Well, it is a land use and growth management plan prepared by the county planning commission or their staff, or in our case, the county planning department, and adopted by the county commissioners or council, whatever elected officials are, that establishes broad goals and criteria for municipalities to use in preparation of their comprehensive plan and land use regulations. So comprehensive plans in general, just so everyone knows, are non-regulatory, although there is a requirement that municipal comprehensive plans should be generally consistent with county comprehensive plans. And so since they're non-regulatory, comprehensive plans are only effective when they're supported by implementation measures, such as zoning or ordinances of other kinds or special projects. Now, in Pennsylvania, the county does not have any land use control authority. So just as I mentioned that the Planning Commission review is advisory to the municipalities' own planning commissions and governing bodies, the planning department's recommendations and comprehensive plan are really advisory to the municipalities. And then the municipalities are the ones who we need to work with to implement our policies and ideas on the ground in terms of their land use decisions. So why do we need a comprehensive plan? In general, it's good to have. It allows us as the county to assert general goals and policies for development throughout the county. We know municipalities have a lot of day-to-day management for the health and well-being of their citizens to think of. So we as a county try to kind of think of the big picture, connect projects and ideas and initiatives throughout the county between and among municipalities. It also assists the county in acquiring grants and loans and technical assistance from the state. The process of having established a plan prior to attempting to implement a project really is looked on favorably by funding providers as, you know, being a well thought out project that has some basis in general community well-being. It allows us to encourage desired development patterns, again, recommending and providing assistance to municipalities where we can so that they can implement the ideas. And it's a precursor often to creating more detailed studies, such as something for a specific corridor or a particular town or even a downtown area. And finally, it's needed because it is required by the municipality's planning code. That is the state enabling legislation that sets out everything that planning, community and county planning must do in terms of zoning, reviewing subdivision and land development, and creating comprehensive plans. So we want to be in compliance with the state. So the Municipalities Planning Code, or MPC, does lay out some requirements for what should be in a county as well as a municipal comprehensive plan, such as a statement of community development objectives and plans and policies for various subject areas such as land use, housing, transportation, natural resource protection, and so on. And also should implement short and long range implementation strategies. So with this in mind, Delaware County developed back in around 2013, the first element of Delaware County 2035 was established as our comprehensive plan. 2035 is the date that is set up because we originally used census data from 2010 as our sort of base year for comparison and for projections. And so this establishes us as having a 25-year time horizon. There had been some past planning efforts leading up to the development of Delaware County 2035 in the mid part of the 2000s. But the previous plans had always ended up hitting roadblocks. They tended to be very technical, text heavy, data heavy. And so this was the first time we were able to get something on the books that was a comprehensive plan for the county. And this was by establishing what we called a land use policy framework plan, which set out those broad policies that covered the types of things that the MPC mandates, but then following up with more detailed component plans for each of the subject areas, which would provide more specific goals, objectives, and actions. So here's what that looks like. With the Delaware County 2035 umbrella of the plan, we have, again, that land use framework plan that was passed in 2013. And then subsequently in 2015, we passed an open space recreation and greenway plan. Then in 2017, an economic development and transportation plan. Historic preservation plan was developed in 2018. And just last year, we finally passed our final element, housing plan in 2020. So we created this flexible framework document, as I mentioned, for a number of reasons. As I said, we'd had previous really well developed plans before, but that were kind of too bulky and not reader friendly and not accessible to the public, and also could be kind of hard to get council to take an interest in, because council wants to make sure they know what they're passing, but they also, you know, have a lot on their plate. So it was kind of hard to sit down and get them to understand a really thick, you know, 200-page policy document. So we made something that we felt could be more easily accessed by the public and municipalities. And by having it in a form that would have these more detailed plans for particular subject areas, municipalities or groups that were seeking particular guidance for a certain area, maybe trails planning or maybe historic preservation, could go right to that part of the plan and not have to mine through a bigger document. And each of the development of each of those, oh, sorry, I'll get to that. So when we developed the land use framework plan, again, starting in 2013, or originally passed in 2013, we took a bottom-up approach to sort of our public engagement, which was essentially, we took a survey or an inventory of municipal comprehensive plans at that time, and then sussed out a number of themes and common elements, and used that to build what we created in Delaware County 2035. And not only did this sort of give us our direction based on the work of the municipalities, it also ensured that there was consistency between our plan and the municipal plans, which is a requirement of the municipalities planning code. So for an example, this is what our survey looked like for Radnor Township. We looked at the 2003 comprehensive plan. Remember, we were originally working on this in around 2010 to 2013. We looked at, you know, what are the contiguous municipalities? What are some of the themes that emerge and some challenges? What are special features that the community has identified? And we fed these into the development of our broad policies, of our general direction for this land use framework plan. So then, as I mentioned, in later years, we built off of the land use framework plan and developed these component plans based on different subject areas. In general, the process of developing these was led less by the community and regional staff who'd done the original framework, and more by the individual sections, such as historic preservation led the historic preservation planning process, transportation led the transportation process, and so on. And this time we did a little bit more of a robust public outreach and public involvement process. We had task forces or steering committees made up of local experts and interested persons for each of those topics. For several of them, we also conducted online public opinion surveys that helped to inform some of the background information, as well as to shape the direction of some of the goals and objectives and policies that we suggested. There were targeted interviews with stakeholders or experts, for example, sessions with PennDOT or with SEPTA to conduct the development of the transportation plan. And then there were some open houses held. And then for each of these component plans was adopted separately by council. And so, as Jackie mentioned, the public feedback period for DVRVC's plan, we also would have public meetings to present the final product to get public feedback and comment before we went to official adoption. So this is the structure. This is kind of what that looks like. Delaware County 2035 Land Use Framework Plan was organized around the sort of themes of the land, the people, and the places of the county. But then each of the subsequent plans had a three-part goal. So for example, to conserve, enhance, and connect open space, recreation, and greenway, to improve, expand, and integrate the transportation network for the transportation plan, and so on. And then under each of these goals for each of the following plans, we also had a series of objectives that supported that, and then a series of action items that would state initiatives that the county would take, mostly in terms of maybe sample ordinances or technical support, and then things that we encourage the municipalities to do. Again, we can't mandate that the municipalities do anything, but we laid out the types of things they could do to support us in this plan. So how do we use it? It guides our decision-making and provides a tool for our municipalities. When our planning commission reviews subdivision and land development proposals that come before them, we, in our staff review, and encourage them to look at the comprehensive plan goals and policies to see consistency. This serves as a framework guide for subsequent plans and special studies that we may do. When we see municipal comprehensive plans and zoning ordinance amendments, again, we compare it against this plan. And once again, to reiterate, it's very good to show that the application for funding, to show that a particular project supports or furthers a goal of the broader municipal as well as the countywide comprehensive plan. And so what happens next for us? Well, we do try as much as we can to outreach to municipalities and the public about the framework plan and the component plans. And for example, the planning commissioners who are on the planning commission currently are, many of them are relatively new and were not around for the process of developing these plans and plan components. So we've been going through at the planning commission meetings and making sure we give them a thorough understanding of what's within the plan so it can inform their reviews. We've had a number of implementation projects based on the goals, objectives, and action items that are within the plan. And we're about to begin the process of developing the next 25-year time horizon plan. The MPC is not specific on how often it should be updated. So generally, every 5 years is good, maybe every 10 years. So we're looking at either 2045 or a 2050 time horizon for our next plan. And we think we'll probably build off of, since we already did this really in-depth sort of plan with all these components, we'll probably do something that's a little bit more sort of a summary of everything and kind of compares and what we've already done and looks to the future based on the previous plan. And so that is all I have. Here again is my contact information. Feel free to reach out to me. And I would encourage you, delcopa.gov/planning is our county website. And we have some very interesting, it's a great way to learn about all the types of projects that Delaware County is engaging in, as well as there is, you'll see a side tab that says the Delaware County 2035, and you can explore all the different elements of the plan on your own, including some summary documents that are a little quicker to go through if you just want something to share or for your information. So I'm going to stop sharing now and move on to the next speaker.
Thank you very much, Rebecca. And our final speaker is our own Cheryl. Cheryl Graf-Tamola has been involved in long-range planning since the 1980s. She is currently chair of the Delaware County Planning Commission and vice president of the Conservancy, as you heard, and has served on the Radnor Planning Commission and as president of the Radnor League of Women Voters. She will focus on the Radnor Township Comprehensive Plan, hopefully a little bit about how she helped develop it and give some specific examples for the planned institutional because every one of our wards has PI property in it.
Okay. I apologize for not having a screen, but I thought there would be a map, but there is not. So I'm just going to talk, unfortunately. As the other two speakers, who I'm very thankful have done a wonderful job, have stated, the planning decisions in Pennsylvania are made at a municipal level. And that is according to the municipalities planning code. The planning decisions, the county and DVRPC can make recommendations, but when it comes down, when the rubber meets the road, it's the municipality's job. Comp plans are based on a number of factors, and they are in place to guide the growth. We understand that there will always be growth or change, and we need a program, an overarching philosophy to guide us as we move forward with what happens in our community and whether it remains healthy and vibrant as we would like it to be. Certainly, as a big picture explained by Jackie and Rebecca, tell us that there is a lot of interconnectedness between all of these things. Jackie's big picture about transportation and all the DVRPC informs also goes through to Rebecca. And the Delaware County Planning Department must make, actually their planning board, make a decision on every time we have a municipal plan. Not every time, but large plans. And it also, our plan depends upon its antecedents, the 1969 plan, the 1988 plan, and of course, the situation as it exists now. The 1969 plan had major goals, which we still try to keep going in the other plans. Number one has remained preserving the green country town. And it's a tough job. The second one was accommodating regional development pressure. And the third, strengthening the tax base. Each time we have a comprehensive plan, the pendulum swings to correct the situation from the previous plan, whatever happened and whatever happens in general. The current plan, the 2003 plan, is over 230 pages long. It has 9 sections, including an implementation section. And those sections have to do with environment and natural resources, housing and demographics, business and economic development, transportation and circulation, historic and architectural resources, institutional use, and existing land use. I'm pretty much going to focus on the institutional use because there's a lot going on there now. A lot of institutions are changing. When the plan was set up with its goals and its actions, certain things were the situation those years, 18 years ago. A lot has changed. They are important to us, institutions are. They not only for their designated function, but also because of their impact in many areas. Their buildings, their employment, their transportation needs, their cultural benefits, and effect on neighbors, and the perceived open space they lend to us with their campus. But we have asked something of them in the 2003 plan, and that is that they provide us with sound planning. Most institutions do have sound planning, but we wanted to know what is in your plan. So the 2003 plan asks those questions. I'm not sure that it's always clear. We also expect them to integrate their uses with the neighborhood, integrate their transportation needs with the community, to improve communications with the institutions and the township, and address things such as the student housing and traffic. We want them to comply with our codes. And the codes bring us around to yet another thing is we need to review the codes. And we did need to review the codes. From 1988, the codes were changed for the 2003 one because it turned out that all institutions aren't the same. That shouldn't have been a surprise. We have a lot of institutions in Radnor Township, from Villanova to Sacred Heart, and it's not the same scale for each of them. So what we needed to do was to separate the two scales and have a review of what those institutions are doing. And we would only get that if they shared their plans with us. We don't always get them. The goals left over from the 88 plan, because there's a thread that runs through each of these, each is built on the other, is that we wanted to limit the institutional use to its present footprint. I think we've done a pretty good job with that in the township. We want their long-range plans. We want to modify the ordinances, and we want to set standards for what happens within the institutions. Right now, we are going through the flux of what is going on with smaller institutions. There's always the danger of what's going to happen. We were worried about, in 2003, the expansion of a large institution getting too big. But now we are concerned with the small institutions converting their use and falling out of vibrancy, I guess you would say. So we're going to have to approach that in some way that is more specific. I think that this program is about what are we going to do to ensure that Radnor Township stays the desirable community that it has been. I think that we have seen problems with the smaller institutions, and that's one of the things that we had never expected to. We did expect it in the past, and in fact, the big focus of the 2003 plan was largely about what to do with the middle school, if you can believe it. Now it's part of our everyday lives. There is the limit on the expansion has been kept pretty well, and I think that that is certainly a credit to all of the institutions, but we need them to interact more with our community, I think. We need to have an annual planning exchange whereby all of the institutions kind of connect with each other to find out what they're doing and how they can cooperate and perhaps minimize the impact on the township. We need to redefine the zoning. And the zoning is an important outgrowth of a comprehensive plan. Zoning wording has to, in some way, or should be, according to the Municipalities Planning Code, reflective of what exists in the comprehensive plan. If you have stated your intentions and your long-range view, which we do in our comprehensive plan, then our zoning should conform with that to get us to the place that the comprehensive plan finds desirable for us, that we all find desirable. And that is what we hope to do with having people be involved in the process. That's one of the questions that people always ask about, well, who comes up with these plans? Well, the plan, it's obvious now that we need planning. There are a lot of things that are changing very rapidly in our township and in the region. And it's incumbent upon our commissioners and our citizens to request that we do something to make Radnor adapt positively to the changes that are happening instead of just accepting what comes to us. So the commissioners are pretty much the final say on the comp plan. We all pay for what it is with our tax dollars. And you develop such a plan by hiring a consultant and by soliciting repeatedly desires of the community. Your desires may not be addressed perfectly in a plan, but you will be at least listened to. And I hope that the community will keep being involved and interested in what a comprehensive plan says, because all the things that happen in the township are in many ways based on it, because some of these other areas, other than institutional, certainly have a lot of play in them, and we need to get involved in them. What's considered is whether the uses are of consequence, whether we're doing the right thing, what are our intentions, what are our unintended consequences could come. We hope the extent the public will be as involved as is humanly possible. With the other two comprehensive plans that we've worked on, I understand that not enough people got involved. It's one of these things that unless it's directly affecting you, you don't think you need to pay attention, but we all need to pay attention now. The process is both objective, with all of the data that we pull in from the consultant, and subjective, whether we like what they say and the direction that we're going. If the township does not address what the community needs, there will be incredible dysfunction and things will not become part of the fabric of a solid and strong community. The last comprehensive plan made many changes, and I would like to take this moment to give it some credit. The Conservancy was created since the last comprehensive plan, and the Conservancy provides us with wonderful education and involvement with the environment of our community. There have been pedestrian improvements, crossing lights, more awareness of pedestrians. Trails have been enhanced and lengthened. We've acquired a great deal of open space, happily. We have an increase in active recreation, and historic preservation ordinances have been enacted, and an Historic and Architectural Review Board has taken hold. These are things that have made our community so much better, and there are things that still need to be done. So it is my hope that people will remain interested in what happens with the township. I'm certainly not as expert as the others, but you get the idea that we all build on each other. And I think that in this future, the plan should be used more than this plan was used to really make those changes that we need to keep the community on the mark, growing the way that we all want it to be, as our introduction was to this beautiful, prosperous, innovative, equitable, resilient, and sustainable region. I think that we all need to work on it ourselves. And it seems like it's time now to update this plan because the pendulum has swung in another direction, and we now need to devote ourselves to writing the plan. So that's my whole concept. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Cheryl. Surprisingly, don't seem to be any questions popping up in the chat room. Does anybody have a question of one of the panelists or all three? Seeing none, surprisingly, I will turn the floor over to Jillian to thank the panelists for the evening.
Thank you. I sort of wish I could be like Judy Woodruff. She has such a nice way of saying good night. Remember? But since I'm not, I just very much want to thank, on behalf of the Radnor League of Women Voters and the Radnor Conservancy, I want to thank the library, of course, and Pamela Sador, reference librarian for adult programs, for making the event possible, for facilitating it and providing the technology. And I'm very appreciative. We're very appreciative of the panelists. Rebecca Ross, Principal Planner, Delaware County Planning Department. Jacqueline Davis, Assistant Manager, Office of Long Range Planning for the Delaware Valley Regional Planning Commission. Cheryl Tamola, Vice President, the Radnor Conservancy. a past president of our League of Women Voters and of Delaware County as well, and a member of the steering committee for Radnor's comprehensive land use plan, as she mentioned, in 1988 and in 2003, the one plan that we live with and live within at the moment. And of course, finally, very, very grateful to our moderator, Gayla McCluskey, a past president of the Radnor League of Women Voters, and currently chair of voter services, which is a huge job, as you can imagine. So thank you all. Oh yeah, good night.
Thank you, Jillian. I guess this is our first time sitting down and talking about such important issues, and we're gathering information. And in order to gather information, we have to listen. And this was a great night for listening to Jackie and Rebecca and Cheryl and Gayla. And thank you, everyone. We have a question. Oh, a comment from Paul. Oh, we have something. Oh, I'm excited. Here we go. From Paul. In Radnor, what efforts are being made to improve things for pedestrians?
Video back on.
Cheryl?
Well, I think all of the trails being improved to try to get us off of the road have certainly been an asset. I would hope that, as I said, all of these plans, things don't get developed entirely. Things are mentioned in the comprehensive plan of 2003, but didn't have, there's so much in there, 230 pages worth, that we haven't gotten to all of them yet. But I would like to see a further emphasis, as you say, on pedestrian safety. One way was to make more trails. Another is to start addressing our sidewalk situation, I would think. And I think that may be addressed in a new comprehensive plan, should we be so fortunate as to get one.
Is there?
Hi.
I don't know if we're.
I see you.
Are there any efforts being made to improve sidewalk availability? For instance, in Villanova, they have put in crossing lights at the intersection of Conestoga Road and Ithan Avenue, but there are no sidewalks coming up to these.
Mhm.
You have to walk along the road. So, I mean, a lot of these neighborhoods were built in the 1950s. They decided nobody needed sidewalks because everyone was going to go everywhere in a car. And now we are told that we need to get out and walk for our health and other reasons. And there is lots of research that tells you that walkable communities are much more positive areas to be in. Is there anything in the plan that is addressing that?
Not in the current plan. I don't think so. I think what needs to happen is that walking needs a champion. I know when we did the comprehensive plan in 2003, I did a map of places where the sidewalk ended. And, you'd be walking along a street and all of a sudden there's a big gap and you're walking on someone's lawn. So it would be nice to actually, anything like that needs funding, because someone needs to design a sidewalk, as simple-minded as that seems. You do need to design a sidewalk. It's an engineering thing and it needs to be funded. I would imagine that we would hopefully start looking for funding from sources such as DVRPC, or maybe not DVRPC, but whoever could fund it, community development, to be able to fund a real sidewalk plan where we would know, okay, next year we're going to do this much, and the next year further, in order to connect all of the sidewalks in the township. That was kind of behind the plan of the Greenways and Open Space Network plan. but that ended up being mostly trails because the idea was to get people off the roadbed.
Yeah. The only problem.
So I'll just add from the DVRPC end, we just released a new tool called the Pedestrian Portal. It's an online map of all of the sidewalks and pedestrian facilities in the 9-county region, and you can go online. I'll actually drop the main website in the chat here, and zoom into a location and see the sidewalks there. And the purpose of the tool is to create a program with technical assistance for municipalities to build on that sidewalk network. So certainly there's an opportunity for Radnor and the surrounding areas to get in touch with our transit and bike ped office to expand the sidewalks and pedestrian facilities there.
And I'll put in a plug for Delaware County and put a link in the chat. We had published a study and guide called Steps Toward Walkability we have a completed sidewalk inventory with that kind of thing, whether it has a vegetative buffer, no sidewalk, or just a sidewalk next to a road. So we have a map of that, and then we have this Steps Toward Walkability publication that we encourage you to review. And just to your earlier point about why you would see something like a newly developed intersection with crosswalks or curb cuts and that kind of thing to nowhere. A lot of times that, in the spirit of good planning, recently subdivision and land development ordinances or zoning or local codes will have been updated to encourage the development of sidewalks. It's just that that's only triggered when there's a change. So like you said, if they decided they needed if they did work on a road or decided they need a signal at this intersection, when they put it in, it's going to have all the best current pedestrian facilities. It's just that, the neighborhood it's outside of nobody is making, unless somebody redevelops there or makes a big change to a property. If someone maybe tore down and redid a house, they might be required to put sidewalks. And that's how you get, like Cheryl said, a sidewalk to nowhere. It ends up being it's well-intended, but it's piecemeal. So I think Cheryl makes a great point in saying there is a need for a champion and, to institute these links, especially in a community like Radnor, where it's pretty much developed. Mm-hmm. Maybe that works great out in the suburbs where you do have more newer things going in to make sure that they are connected by sidewalks. But in Radnor, yeah, there could be some patchy areas.
It's interesting.
Could I say, I just want to add, this has to do with pedestrian safety. It's not sidewalks, but it's what they call the traffic taming strategies, which you see throughout Radnor. It's more for vehicles, cars, drivers, but the whole intention is to tame the traffic at certain intersections so that people don't cut corners, so that they slow down. And indirectly, that does affect pedestrian safety. It's no substitute for a sidewalk, but if we could see a lot more of that, so that it becomes the norm and drivers expect these traffic taming things jutting out into the roadway. I think people they do understand and they're accepting them. They're not going to be thrown or irritated because all of a sudden they're not able to sort of make an extra lane where there shouldn't be a lane. So I'd like to see a lot more of the traffic taming structures.
Right. I think I would too. Thanks, John.
Do we have time for one more? Do we have one more? Okay, we talked about pedestrians.
No.
We do have from Sarah, does the Delco plan or the Conservation District planning address frequency of SEPTA buses? It would be great if SEPTA's 106 bus ran more frequently along Route 30.
I am not intimately familiar with the transportation plan, as that's not my area of focus. I do know they did some in-depth studies of the different routes. So certainly that's the kind of thing, you know, reach out to Delaware County and our transportation planners to see what kind of proposals there are for service frequency, because we do interact pretty regularly with SEPTA. Sorry, I don't have a specific answer. But.
Jackie, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, just being in touch with our transportation planners at SEPTA, they're working on a bus network redesign. So kind of starting from scratch and taking stock of the routes where they're kind of missing areas where they need to go, and that'll include frequency as well. So that's going to be a implementation over the next couple of years, but something will be coming down from the pike from them.
Then on behalf of everyone here tonight, Radnor Conservancy and League of Women Voters of Radnor Township and Radnor Memorial Library, and our guests, Gayla, Jackie, Rebecca, and Cheryl, we're all saying good night. Thank you all for your attention. And we did record this, and if you'd like to check for it on YouTube, we'll be putting it out on the Radnor Memorial Library YouTube channel in the future. So thank you, everyone, and good night.
Good night.
Good night, everyone.